members in the gallery and also those residents that are listening and watching our live council streaming from home. If we could all stand and local government prayer and acknowledge the country. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of our lands and our surrounding water. Community, we recognise and we respect.
Almighty God, I ask you bless this council, allow it to be an agent of change, people of this city and beyond. Direct and prosper its deliberations, honouring of your name, welfare of the people it serves.
We gratefully acknowledge the men, women and Navy, Army and Air Force made the supreme sacrifice in the presence of Australia's freedom and democracy. We also proclaim our gratitude to those who return to us.
Thank you, please. And I think that service acknowledgement is very apt, given that we have just had Anzac Day, and I'm not sure how many of you have seen the wonderful service and the march that we had today with the on Sunday rather, with the Light Horse Brigade. And it was the first time that we've actually had a march here in Victor Harbour on Anzac Day for some time. It's very special. We don't have any apologies, but Councillor Littley will be about half an hour late as he has been unfortunately held up. There are no items adjourned or lying on the table, but I would like to remind all of the elected members their duty to disclose any material and actual perceived conflicts of interest if that comes about on any of the items that come in tonight. If we move to item 5, the minutes of the previous meeting, the recommendation is that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council, which was on the 22nd of March, be confirmed as true and accurate. Do I have someone to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and seconded by Councillor Robertson. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Henderson? Councillor Robertson? No, does anybody want to speak to that? All those in favour? That's carried unanimously, thank you. 5.2, the minutes of the previous special meeting of council on the 6th of April, and the recommendation is that those minutes be confirmed as true and accurate. Do I want to have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Hales. And somebody want to second that? Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Do either of you want to speak to that motion? No? Does anybody want to speak to that motion? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We have the minutes of the previous special council meeting of the 19th of April 2021, and I will ask CEO to explain. Councillor Kemp had a couple of questions in relation to that special meeting and the minutes. So I might, before I asked for a mover and a seconder, ask our CEO to just perhaps answer your questions, Councillor Kemp.
Through the Mayor, thank you. Thank you for your email today, Councillor Kemp. On reviewing of the tape from that special meeting on the 19th of April, there was an additional point of order that was raised. It's not fair to say that the minutes are not correct. We're not required by legislation to record the points of orders. It is our practice, though, that we do it. There was only one additional point of order. It was in regards to a conversation that the Mayor and Councillor Charles were having at the time. And I do have the word for word of that discussion. I believe that point of order that was being raised at the time was reaffirmed by Councillor Littley. He didn't call an additional point of order. So I have created some wording to correct those minutes, which I hope would suffice, which basically is stating that they be confirmed as a true and accurate record with the exception of item 4.2, which is corrected to read at 5:59 p.m. Mayor Jenkins raised a point of order that Councillor Charles was not speaking to the motion. That was the point of order that was raised at the time in regards to discussions that were occurring. I hope that answers your question.
Can I ask you to add that to the motion, please, Karina? And then I'll ask for a mover and a seconder.
Mayor Jenkins, I'll talk to the motion once it's moved and seconded.
Okay. So the recommendation is that the minutes of the previous special meeting of council held on the 19th of April be confirmed as true and accurate, with the exception of item 4.2, which is corrected to read 5:59 p.m. Mayor Jenkins raised a point of order that Councillor Peter Charles was not speaking to the motion. Someone like to... Thank you, Councillor Robertson, and seconded. Thank you, Councillor Hales. Do either of you want to speak to that? No. Councillor Kemp, you said that you'd like to speak to it.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I appreciate the CEO's response and made the corrections to the minutes. Personally, I understand the legislation requirements, but also that's our meeting procedures to record the points of order. But technically speaking, Councillor Litley did make a point of order. The facts are that the Mayor at the time did not call for the reasons for the point of order by Councillor Litley. So to me, I won't be supporting these minutes because I still believe they're incorrect. Thank you.
Would you like to respond, Victoria? No? Does anybody else want to speak to the motion? Not, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. We did a deputation from William Owens in relation to the Bluff boat ramp public toilet consultation, but I received an email this afternoon and he's satisfied with the public consultation and the results from the public consultation which speak to what he was going to talk about, so that we don't have a deputation now. We have one question from the gallery from Mr. Blatchford, who isn't here. And so there's no need, and Mr. Blatchford's been given his answer as to why his question would have been refused anyway. You have a question, Councillor Robertson?
Yes, Mayor. What is happening to item 8.1?
We're not there yet. Item 6 is deputations. Item 6.1 is the deputation in relation to the, right?
Yep, okay.
We now move to item 8 and item 8.1, which you refer to, Councillor Robertson. The recommendation, which I'll do in block, is that Council receive and note the petition and note the maintenance and improvements report. You would see in the correspondence from the Council that the issues raised in the petition has resulted in a number of things happening with staff meeting with residents. So can I move that on block? Carol Schofield, thank you very much, moving that way, and Councillor Henderson seconding that. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Robertson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The Ena Reid Reserve was largely developed by the Victor Harbour Rotary Club. It was some 10 odd years ago. The report from the staff mentions a number of things in there, but a couple of things they didn't mention was that the reserve has been encroached upon considerably by some residents of Kingfisher Crescent, but being kind of a blind, at present, a blind reserve, maybe that didn't cause any issues with the staff. But I think one of the issues related to reserves like Ena Reid Reserve is that who was Ena Reid? What did she do? Why was it named after her? I had done some checking, and it appears that that it was a former councillor, Liz Cooper, who requested the Rotary Club of Victor Harbor to fix up the reserve, and that it may have been named after Ena, who was the wife of another person. I think his name was Len Reid. But I think that what's this highlights is that behind the reserve, the existing Ena Reid Reserve, there's a whole lot of land about to be developed, I expect. And that one would hope that in the development of that parcel of presently vacant land, that consideration will be given to linking up the Ena Reid Reserve with the rest of that proposed development, so that it can be enjoyed by people there. But I would also like to suggest that the council work with the Rotary Club of Victor Harbor and perhaps the Encounter Bay Historic Group, so we can put up a little bit more information for people that want to know a little bit more about who Ena Reid was.
Sorry to interrupt you, Councillor Robertson. Some of the things that you're talking about are very interesting and I think probably should be discussed with council at some stage. We are talking and specifically focusing on the recommendation that is there at the moment, and given that it's important that we direct our discussion to the recommendation, I am going to stop you there. Because you're talking beyond that. But I think what you're saying is important, and it's worth perhaps having a discussion with council later. Perhaps with Kathy Hayter, you could make a time to meet with her.
Yeah, but I hear what you're saying, Mayor, but I think what I was saying was directed at, if you look at page 9 in the middle of that, that the response with the staff and residents inspected the following actions have been undertaken, but there are a number of other actions that really, if we do the job properly on this and other reserves, might make a considerable difference to them.
And you may well be right, Councillor Robertson, but we are talking about receiving and noting the petition, the maintenance and improvement report, and that council receive and note the Ena Reid Reserve maintenance improvement petition. And it would be good to keep the discussion to that. Is there any further discussion in relation to the item 8.1? Councillor Schofield, do you want to close the debate? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Robertson, I'll ask Ms Hayter if she would catch up with you afterwards so that you can talk through with her and we may be able to advance some of the things that you're talking about, because I think that's some very good ideas. We now move to item 9.1, which is the outstanding resolutions, and the recommendation is that council receive and note the outstanding resolutions report. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Henderson and seconded by? Thank you, Councillor Mann. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to it? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I've got a question to the CEO on the outstanding resolutions. There's 24 outstanding, some are up to 2 years old. What is the reasonable time frame to have outstanding resolutions sitting on our books and no action being taken, or limited action because the commentary doesn't change very much? And what is a reasonable number to have on our books? Number and timeframes, if the CEO could answer that, please.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Kemp. I don't have an answer as to what is a reasonable timeframe. There are decisions that council make, resolutions that council make that rely on other parties. We try to keep council informed of the contribution or information we receive back from other parties. Sometimes resolutions of the chamber take many years to implement. I'm actually quite give consideration to the way in which resolutions are worded so that we don't have resolutions that sit open-ended that don't ever have an end date, because there are some that do. They're ongoing matters. So I'm trying to be more particular about how those resolutions are made. But some of these items that still do sit outstanding have very good reasons as to why. If the chamber wishes to set a time frame that they don't want to have outstanding resolutions sitting on any longer, I'm happy to abide by that.
Follow-up question. Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. CEO, I suppose really it's about our workload, capability and capacity for the council to undertake some of these resolutions. I understand there are outside influences which we have no control over, but is it getting to a point that if we're having these number of outstanding resolutions that we are exceeding our capacity and capability of delivering because of our current workload?
Through the Mayor, that may be the case in some circumstances, it may not in others. Again, each resolution is quite different in its intent or its purpose. So again, I can't just broadly answer that there's more outstanding resolutions because we haven't got capacity or we have a significant workload. Many of these resolutions, you know, there are a number that have been delivered and been done quite efficiently. And yes, there are some that are sitting still outstanding. I'm happy to provide a further report back to the next meeting for those that are, you know, beyond a certain time. If they're more than 1 or 2 years old and council would like some further information or explanations to why they're taking so long, I'm happy to deliver that for the chamber. But as I say, each resolution is very different.
Thank you for your comments.
Are there any further comments or questions in relation to the outstanding resolutions? Councillor Henderson, do you want to close? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Item 9.2, the Recreation Centre Management Committee review terms of reference. I think we discussed this at the last CASPAC meeting I think we had, and these relate to taking out volleyball in relation to the Recreation Centre Management Committee. I'll do both of those recommendations en bloc. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Mann, thank you very much. And Councillor Charles, thank you very much. Do either of you want to speak to them? Councillor Mann?
Yeah, yeah, just quickly, Mayor Jenkins, just wanted to note with this one, it's unfortunate that we're losing volleyball out of the Rec Centre Management Committee. 2 of my good friends were the ones running and organising it. And as they've gone, as it does happen, gone to find work outside of Victor, they haven't been able to continue and no one's been able to take their position. I think this is sort of one of those, the real consequences to the community that happens when we have sort of young adults leave to go find other work and employment. And I think it's one of the reasons we do have to fight to keep them here, because programs such as this that had a lot of good interest and a lot of community members involved sadly misses out when people leave.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Councillor Charles, did you want to speak to this? No. Does anybody want to speak to it? Councillor Robertson and then Councillor Glasbrook.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question, if I could, through you to Councillor Mann. I did have a question down here related to the removing of the Volleyball Association. Quickly, I presume that if that association gets legs again, it can come back into the rec centre. Secondly, there wasn't any reason given why the club fell apart. I mean, the obvious answer was that, you know, two of the leaders in the club left, and then no one else put their hand up. But my question is really in relation to some of the other sporting clubs. I've raised this before, concerns about whether the impact of COVID was anything to do with that, in the sense that I'm not sure that the Good Sports program that Jeremy Bell runs here, that whether we've got enough handle on some of the clubs that run activities there, what sort of financial and administrative shape they're in for the future, and whether any of them are struggling. Could this one have been foreseen, or was this something that these two people, two leaders because if it wasn't, then, you know, maybe one would have thought that there'd been a succession plan or something like that in place. But
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Robertson. Excellent questions. Just on that first one, I'm not particularly certain around the process to come back onto the committee. I know Nick, Councillor Hales had previously been on and may be able to speak to that after, but I'm imagining there is the mechanism to do that once, if there was the interest again and the leadership. And I guess and I understand what you're saying about the reflective of COVID and the impact on our community groups and sporting groups, but I think what is quite true for a lot of these groups is that there's often a few individuals who are carrying quite a significant load with a lot of community groups. And in this case, there was a few individuals that were in charge of organising it and running it and had been doing it for a number of years and doing it quite successfully. They were definitely well-attended sporting events, but unfortunately it's that thing of everyone lives a busy life these days and everyone has commitments and juggling, and there just wasn't the people to take that up. And I think, you know, you make good points around succession planning and things like that as well in these groups. And maybe that, you know, that's something that, you know, I'm sure is part of that good sports. I can't speak to that without knowing the full extent of those roles. But yeah, I think definitely valid points about making sure that our community groups and our sporting associations have those plans and that succession. And again, that I guess comes back to making the jobs, making the environment to keep people to stay and work and live in Victor, so all these groups can continue.
Thank you. Councillor Glasbrook and then Councillor Hales.
Just a question as well, if I could. Does this group have anything to do with the courts down by the foreshore near Carwin? No. Yes. Okay. Oh, thank you. It probably may not be an opportune time, but it would be. I think council needs to consider those courts down by the foreshore at some stage. They can be a little bit untidy at times, so I don't know if that's someone could take that on board. Thank you.
Councillor Hales.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, just in response to Councillor Robertson's question in regards to membership of the committee itself, on page 22 of the agenda, within the amended terms of reference, not that they have been amended this particular section under membership, it does outline that any regular user group of the rec centre is entitled to membership of this committee, subject to them accepting an invitation to be on it. So that's the first one. Yes, any regular booked user of the rec centre is entitled to be represented on this committee, and we value their input. And then just to Councillor Glasbrook's query around the foreshore volleyball courts, they have run competitions from time to time, beach volleyball competitions, but that is held by the lease of the owners of Kawa, and they have a sporting group licence as well. So they've been the initiators of that competition, and the volleyball courts, I believe, fall within their leased area. So they're responsible for maintaining that.
Thank you, Councillor Hales. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I won't be supporting this motion with a change of terms of reference, not because of the volleyball's been removed. The fact that the other minor amendments, which hasn't been spoken about, is the change of the representation positions from elected members to council members. To me, that could erode the elected members' power base, that they won't be on the committee. It could be just council staff. I know council members mean any person, elected member or staff, but by changing the terms of reference to remove elected members as a sole would then erode the ability for elected members to sit on there if staff want to control and take over these committees. So that's why I won't be supporting the changes on this, unless we revert it back to elected members. That's what we do. We sit on committees, we chair committees, and on behalf of the council, as part of our role. And I see this as a way of negating elected members doing their job.
Would you like to respond to that, Cody?
If I may, through the Mayor, just to clarify, council member does mean a council member of council elected member. All of our policies have been progressively updated, changing the wording elected member to council member, because that has been a change in the legislation. It's not that it doesn't, it's not deviating from you as elected members. It does not mean council staff member. That is specifically represented differently with any terms of reference. Council member means a member of this council, whether it be the mayor or a councillor. So we have progressively actually been updating all of our policies, terminology, and removing elected member to council member. That is the only change.
Thank you for the
Victoria.
clarification.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. 9.3 is the Australian Coastal Councils Association Committee Management Call for Nominations. I did say that I was going to be nominating for this, but I am withdrawing for private reasons. Does anybody else wish to nominate for the Coastal Councils Association Committee? I wondered whether or not you were interested, Councillor Charles, given that you're on the group, and this may fit in with that interest of yours.
Interest, yes, I guess you could call it an interest or responsibility, but I don't believe that any elected member should be on this particular committee. That there should be anybody, and I'm not referring to elected members as such not being good enough, but they move on. Whereas I think it should always be somebody who is from staff, and staff can then share the information, which they normally do anyway. I don't see that there's any benefit.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I guess that summarises it. Yes, by all means, butt in.
So I'm withdrawing my nomination. Does anybody else want to nominate? You'll nominate Councillor Henderson? Councillor Henderson nominates. Do we have any other nominations? No. If we've only got Councillor Schofield?
Can I second that nomination?
The recommendation will be that council supports Councillor Henderson, so you may want to move the full recommendation, but I just need to check if there's any other nominations, because then we need to go through a voting process. So if there are no other nominations, the recommendation I'll do on block, that council receive and note the call for nominations report. And the second one is that council supports Councillor Henderson's nomination for the representative on the Coastal Council Association Committee. You're moving that way, Councillor Schofield? Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Do either of you want to speak to that? No. I'll put that to the vote then, or does anybody want to speak to that?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Nothing personally against Councillor Henderson sitting on this. Again, I believe this is one of these types of committees where more benefit will come from staff members representing the council and bringing back to the council which things they can implement. For what I've seen of the times of the elected members who've been away and come back, even though the reports have been done, but there's no action's been taken from any of those commitments that have gone away. Nothing's been implemented from the council's perspective. That's my take, my opinion. So that's why I'm not supporting it, because I think it's more of a staff position to fill more so than an elected member.
Thank you. Is there any further commentary? Councillor Charles?
As I was saying, I agree with that. And really the bank of information and knowledge is within the staff. Staff who speak to other staff can procure, if you want to say, the information they need on a particular subject. We've got plenty of means of communicating without sending someone to a conference in Western Australia on one occasion and up into New South Wales or north of New South Wales, and perhaps it was Queensland, I'm not sure now, at expense to the council for little use, to be quite honest. We've got 9 kilometres of concerning coast here. The rest is certainly not a concern to us. We've got more wetlands and low areas and floodplains, but all that information and knowledge is contained in, if you don't want it verified, in YouTube. And if it's not that, you can follow all these conferences after they've been had and get all the information that you require. And I think it's a whole lot better that a director goes If there is a need to go, I think we've learnt now that Zoom and other methods are the way to go. Getting together and doing a tour, having lunch, having a break, having afternoon tea, I don't think this gets anybody anywhere except on a holiday.
Thank you, Councillor Charles. Is there any further debate? Councillor Schofield, did you want to close the debate? No. So I'll put that to the floor, that recommendation en bloc. All those in favour? And those against? Can I do that again, please? All those in favour? And those against? That's lost. No? Is that casting vote? That was a draw. I beg your pardon. Can we just do that again so that I can be very sure? Yes, it's very trying, Councillor Charles, but we want to make sure that we do things correctly. All those in favour, can you put your hands right up? 1, 2, 3, 4. And those against? 1, 2, 3, 4. That is, I'll use my casting vote and I'm voting in favour. That motion is carried. Certainly. All those in favour, please stand. Sorry? Yeah. Councillor Mann. Councillor Schofield. Councillor Hales. And Councillor Henderson. And against is Councillor Robertson. Councillor Charles. Councillor Glasbrook. And Councillor Kemp. And the vote is carried on the casting vote of the Mayor. Thank you. We now move to item 9.4, which is the 2021 Local Government Association Ordinary General Meeting. And I'll do recommendation 1 and 2 en bloc. That council receive and note the meeting report and that council appoint Mayor Moira Jenkins as the council delegate and Deputy Mayor Carol Schofield as the proxy delegate for the 2021 Local Government Association Ordinary General Meeting. Moved by Councillor Hales and seconded by Councillor Henderson. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. The third recommendation is that council endorse the voting recommendations related to the recommendation reports from the Greater Adelaide Region Organisation of Councils Committee for the meeting to be held on Friday the 30th of April as detailed below. And you've got 8.1, 8.2, 8.3 and 8.4. Can I just ask, are there any of those items that you want to debate? In that case, then I'll ask someone to move recommendation 3. Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and seconded by Councillor Schofield. Do either of you want to speak to that?
Just to say, I think they're all very good recommendations. No, I personally support them all.
Thank you. Does anybody want to speak to that? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. The 2021 loan report. The first recommendation is that council receive and note the report. Someone like to move that way? Councillor Schofield and seconded Councillor Charles. Either of you want to speak to receiving and noting the report? Anybody want to speak to receiving and noting the report? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. The second recommendation, I'll take as read. Item 1 and 2 of the second recommendation. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Robertson. And seconded by Councillor Schofield. Do either of you want to speak to that? Councillor Robertson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to
Kelly? Thank you, through the Mayor. So council is the one that takes out the loan with the LGFA. So we would make the repayment and recover that from the community group that took out the loan.
Okay, so what is going to be our action to recover that money? Do we, or have we already written to that group or whatever it was? I'm not interested in that info, but we've already written to them to repay it straight away, I guess?
So through the Mayor, when community groups take out loans with council, they're provided with a repayment schedule. And so they automatically have an invoice raised and sent to them prior to their due dates, just like a sundry debtor.
Coming back to the issue that I raised before in relation to the demise of the Volleyball Association, I'm interested to know if this capacity to repay the loan is something that we're tracking within council here, because we have several other community loans, 78 and 80, which are not, 80 in particular is not due for a long time. The 78 is due this time next year. But do we keep a track of the capacity to repay loans from groups that we make loans to?
Through the Mayor, so the process for a community loan, we actually have an application form that requires a number of documents to be provided. So we do an initial assessment on whether or not the club has capacity to repay those loans. Their loan terms, especially the amount of time that they're given, is extremely influenced by that capacity to pay, as well as their expected longevity in terms of the club going forward. The risks around whether or not they're making improvements to a council asset is also taken into account in terms of that risk. And the clubs are able to come back to council at any point in time to ask for an amendment to their repayment schedules. We automatically gave most of the community loans a 12-month sort of hold during COVID. So their repayments are actually sort of 1 year behind, but they had no interest attached to that. So at any time they can come back to council and ask for either better terms or a hold on their repayments.
Thank you. If I might ask a supplementary question to that. When we and I appreciate the efforts being made to cushion the repayment issues. I mean, if you've been involved in local clubs and associations and so on that go through these periodic times of great difficulty, financial difficulty, that they can be picked up. But I'm curious to know also if we have a handle on, is there any way we can check without being intrusive with clubs and associations to say, well, how are you travelling? And last year, for instance, the council was very generous with providing funds that enabled associations and groups to not just stem the provide support to the cash flow, but also to restructure and to improve their business operations.
Again, through the Mayor, we're not, from a finance point of view, we're not resourced to offer that type of service to the community groups themselves. But we genuinely ask if they have any issues if we have any late payments or anything like that. We have bill softening options. They're able to ring and make different arrangements, but we don't proactively go out and ask them if we can look at their accounts and give them advice. It's not seen as our position to do such from a finance point of view.
Thank you. Councillor Schofield, did you want to speak to the motion? Does anybody want to speak to this? Councillor Glasbrook and then Councillor Kemp.
Just a question, if I could, for the Director of Finance, or not Director, Kelly. Sorry, I've had a mental blank. Will this be an enduring CAD? Like, will this go on after the 3-year period, or will it automatically close down?
Through the Mayor, so it will stay in place, but it will revert back to whatever is the normal discounted rate rather than the special discounted rate. The CADs normally last for between 10 to 20 years, and so it would stay there until it matured and basically drops off. But after the 3 years, the interest rate would increase back to the normal discount.
Can I ask another question? Thank you. So we've got quite a few CADs there, obviously, at the moment that aren't being utilised. Does that, is there any advantage in that, or does that get messy with, your bookkeeping, having all these different loans sitting there?
Through the Mayor, it does a little. Some of them are historic and are quite small, so we're just waiting for them to mature so that they drop off, the couple of the smaller ones. In terms of this one, it's a good idea for us to be able to take advantage of the lower rate, and this is the only way we can do that. Considering the big capital expenditure that we're sort of currently moving into in the next year or two, I would expect that most of those CADs would be required at some point during the construction phase. And it just means that we essentially we'll have 3 different accounts that we're running CADs through the system. And they get reconciled almost weekly, and if not monthly at the absolute longest.
Thank you, Councillor Glasbrook. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Question to Kelly again. Thank you, Kelly. At the moment, we've got 13 million in CAD. That's our figure. This will now increase it to 13.347 million, whatever it is. Would that be the case? So if that's the case, from a risk profile perspective, how does that look? Because even though we haven't borrowed up against that full amount, but from financial perspective, don't we seem to be looked at that we have to have the ability to pay that 13 or 16 million dollars back now? So it's looked like we do have a loan out for 16, because that's basically what the risk would look at. So have you done a risk analysis on taking on an extra 3 million, how the risk to the council would be by having an additional ability to borrow and max it out?
So through the Mayor, the additional 3.4, I think it is, $1 million CAD will in no way max us out. We're still well below our net financial liabilities ratio in terms of 100% of our revenue that we take in. The opportunity to take out the CAD at the lower interest rate was seen to be a better decision in terms of rather than taking out a fixed term loan for that amount. And we are only charged interest on the amount that's outstanding at any given time. So what it does is it allows a little bit of room for movement for council moving into big capital construction builds.
Supplement question, please, through the Mayor. At the moment, if we have 6.8 million outstanding, and then we can borrow up to 16, I'm just wondering, is there enough in the CAD system, or will we be borrowing above that, other loans for major projects, which may take us up towards the outside the 16 million? I can understand the CADs could be for short-term borrowings to get projects started and that, but then there's major borrowings to complete them and to for the major aspects of them. So how do we see ourselves at the moment with the long-term financial plan, looking at having this ability now, and then how that would look once the long-term financial plan is approved on those years of expenditure and borrowings? So we would be maxing out our revenue.
So through the Mayor, in terms of the annual business plan for this year, we had forecast that we would need to take out loans of around 4.5 million. We're suggesting that we do essentially 3.5 at this point in time. In terms of the long-term financial plan, each of those decisions will need to be made by council. If there is further funding required outside of the CADs that we have in place, including this new one, a report would have to come back to council with the full implications of what that looks like. So there is further opportunity for council to either request or want us to reduce the CADs in order to take out a fixed term loan, or similarly keep it in the CAD system. It does still meet our treasury requirements in terms of the mix between the fixed and the variables.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? If not, I will put that recommendation to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? Councillor Littley?
Can I abstain from voting because I wasn't here for the full discussion?
You can't abstain. You can't abstain for voting. You're not in favour then. So can we do that again? Can we do that again? All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now go to 10.1, which is the Festivals and Events Sponsorship Program, round 2. Can I just ask, because I could do all of these on block, but if there is any particular event that elected members want to discuss, I can take that out and do that separately. Are you happy for me to do it on block? Yep. So thank you. So moved Councillor Henderson and seconded Councillor Hales. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to it? Councillor Robertson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. It's good to see some of these the events that have been put forward, and all of them, except for one, is being supported. This is great stuff for our community down here and for our economy. And one thing I was looking at though was the time it takes to process these. I mean, this is just a few $1,000s, but it means a lot in terms of the success of an event is directly related to the time that's available for preparing and setting it up. And I looked at the time when these sponsorship, well, the applications went in, and the time that we're getting them here. So this is 27th of April. Here we are when the assessment panel met on the 19th of March, and presumably, and I would have thought that it would be possible at another time to actually have put these in front of the March meeting of the March Council meeting. It would have been a bit tight in terms of the time, but at least it gives the event organisers a sense that, you know, that we're also in a hurry, that we're keen to get these things moving and to maximise the time that's available for them to get their events organised. So for me, it's just, you know, that it's that just to ask that we give more of a sense of urgency in moving these things forward.
Thank
There's
you.
not a lot of money involved in this.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. I'll pass that on. Any further commentary? Councillor Charles?
I'd just like to say that the people viewing, if there are many, I don't know, on live stream, and some of the people in the gallery wouldn't know what we're talking about with half of these things that we bring in the earlier portion of the meeting, the conversation. And here we have probably something that they'd be very interested in, I think, probably at least to mention what each one is, what the events, because there's some interesting events here, even by name, if nothing else. A fake film festival. Well, that's an attraction, isn't it? Does that get you interested? Anyway,
Sorry,
there are a lot of
asking me a
things here.
question?
Well, it does to me. And then we've got an ultra series run from on the Hyson Trail, nothing like 105 kilometres, which we're supporting. The Viking Festival, which I believe was very successful, and it's the very first one. So look forward to something more happening this time around. Then we've got the Bangladeshi Cultural Club having a festival, little support for them. So it goes. I just think that, you know, we could be very boring to watch, and a lot of people would just turn off if we continued this way.
I'll ask the CEO to respond to you, Councillor Charles.
Through the Mayor, if I may, I guess the council meeting is, unfortunately, it's not a show. It actually is a formal process for you to make decisions. And the reason we're required to provide a public agenda to our communities prior to the meeting is so that members are aware of what you are going to be considering. All of these documents are publicly available prior to the meeting and currently as we speak, and so will the minutes. And then again, it's our responsibility to inform the community of decisions the chamber is making. It's unfortunate we are live streaming, but it's very difficult to give a running commentary of everything that is actually being considered by the chamber at any one time. That is the purpose of the public agenda and the public minutes about what you're discussing.
Thank you for your answer. I understand that, but it might be possible through our IT people to possibly put a little information up in the written word, and then we could be talking in the background. It'll be there for people to read. It's not, just please, if you don't mind, it's not a matter of being a show. It's a matter of people knowing what we're up to and to take an interest in council. And that's what we want them to do, I would have thought.
Is there any further commentary? Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I think there's a great initiatives and benefits coming having these events in Victor Harbor, but I do have a problem with approving budgets for 21-22. There are some events there which won't be delivered into October, September, so I don't know why we are pre-approving budgets for next year while we're still going through budget deliberations. I will see these, most of we would get the funding once the new financial year comes into play, but to pre-approve budgets to me is not good governance, good process. I guess, does the actual amount to be pre-approved, that comes off the figure for 21-22 budget? In other words, that if it's a $28,000 figure next year, we only get 23,000 because we pre-approved 5,000. So that's why I prefer not to do it. If it was something around July, I think, yeah, maybe we would pre-approve it because it needs to have an approval straight away. But when it's that far away, I don't think it's worthwhile doing it while we're still doing budget deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. I'll let Kelly answer that, but I'll also say it's a bit, Councillor Robertson was concerned that we weren't doing it fast enough. If we did it slower so that we weren't committing next year's budget money until next year, that actually slows down that process even more for clubs that are wanting to put on events, you know, from July until the latter half of next year. But I'll let Kelly answer your question more specifically.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, in regards to recommendations 2 to 5, the amounts will actually come out of this financial year's donation budget and be given to those groups if it's approved by council, so that they can plan and get on with organising their events. Recommendation 6 is the only one that is looking for a pre-budget commitment because it's the in-kind components, which is essentially our staff doing road closures and things like that. So the amount that is actually looking at for next year as a pre-budget commitment is 5,500, and that would come out of this normal line that is within the 21-22 budget. It's not an increase on top of what's already there.
Thank you, Kelly. Are there any further comments? If not, Councillor Robertson, did you want to close the debate? No. You moved it, didn't you? Was it? No, Marilyn moved it. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Councillor Henderson, did you want to close the debate? No. In that case, then I'll put the recommendation to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now have item 10.2, which is the Arts and Culture Grant Program. And once again, I'll do that en bloc unless there's any anyone wants to do the recommendation separately. Would someone like to move that en bloc? Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and seconded Councillor Schofield. Beg your pardon?
I'm sorry, Mayor Jenkins, did we do 1 to 5 on that last item? So did we move number 6?
Sorry, 1 to 6.
It was 1 to 6.
Yep.
Sorry, my mistake.
No, that's all right. Sorry. If I wasn't clear enough. 10.2, moved by Councillor Henderson, seconded by Councillor Schofield. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Henderson? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Kemp?
Again, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. One of the things I do find interesting about this proposal is that we're transferring money from another budget to cover the cost on some of these items. I think we allocate money to certain budget lines because they're there for a purpose. You know, if you go to move them around to other events or other thing, why are they there in the first place? So it's robbing Peter to pay Paul, because then we need some more money in another budget line, which we're taking this $6,000 from. Then we rob somebody else to pay for that because we need money for that area. So I think we should stick within our budget pretty well, and that's what we set budgets for, is the fact that we have to stick within and be prudent in how we spend these monies. And I just don't think it's a good look again on this aspect. So if there's not enough money available for all the events, then someone misses out. I'm afraid that's how we run our business. We need to stick within what we allocate and expend the monies on, instead of transferring funds around all the time. So that's why I won't be supporting this. I'm not against the arts and culture aspect. I'm against the process of how we're funding this.
Would you like to respond to that, Kelly? Graham?
Through the Mayor, there might be a couple of members of the various panels that assess them that would be able to speak better into this, but I think this one is a bit unique in that part of the thinking behind this is that there was one of the events that was proposed in the events and festivals line was more aligned with a arts and culture event. So it was an event, but it was based on arts and culture, so it could have fitted both. So there was a decision made to perhaps encourage that to come in under the arts and culture program. So there was a sense of interchangeability between that to some extent.
Thank you, Graham. There any further commentary, Councillor Littley?
Just looking at those events there, all those grant funding amounts, I would suggest that some of those grants are going towards events that would fit squarely into the attraction of tourist events and special events. So I think it's while it's being moved from one program to another, it's achieving what that initial budget amount would seek to achieve. This is the tourism and other special event expenses. Moving it to the cultural community grant scheme, I think those cultural community events or projects will attract tourists. So it's having the same effect, the net effect.
Thank you, Councillor Littley. Councillor Henderson, you'll be closing debate. So I'll just ask if anybody else has got anything to say. Councillor Henderson, would you like to close the debate?
Yes, just to add to what Graham and Councillor Littley have said, it we can't actually silo some of these things, arts and culture, festivals and activities, and even community activities and community grants. We shouldn't think in a siloed way. Those three areas all overlap all the time. Sometimes they could fit in one or more, or even all three of those areas. And so that's why I think our budget needs to be flexible in all of these areas.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. I now put the recommendation on block to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now move to 10.3, which is the Rock and Roll Festival 2021-22 budget. And I'll just highlight, we're talking about, in recommendation 2, it talks about the Victor Harbor Rock and Roll Festival. We've picked up that mistake, and it is a Rock and Roll Festival, not a Rick and Roll Festival. And I'll do that recommendation on block 2 if someone would like to move that way. Thank you, Councillor Charles, and Councillor Littley seconding that. Councillor Charles, do you want to speak to that?
No, I think the whole event speaks for itself after all these years.
Thank you. Councillor Littley? No, does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Glasbrook and then Councillor Robertson.
Well, I support this as well, of course. I'm a little bit concerned with the fact that it's not going to be in the main street. You know, if these events, if we're paying to put these events on to stimulate our economy, well, I'm not sure that we're going to stimulate our economy as well as we would down at the Encanto Bay Football Oval. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. I did speak with one of the members of the car club today, who's on the committee for this show, and they did agree with what I was thinking, and suggested whether we could possibly continue to plan to have it in the main street, because it's still, I don't know, what is it, 4 or 5 months away. Hopefully some of those COVID restrictions may have been eased or watered down by then, and have plan B is down at the Encanto Bay Footy Oval. So that was just a thought that I had, because, you know, I think that the hotels and the shops and things in the main street get a significant benefit out of the Rock and Roll Festival. The footy club would love to have it out of it, but I think for the broader community there'd be much more benefit in the main street. So it was just a suggestion. The car club thought that would be possible to plan for the main street, but if worst case scenario, have option B to go down to the footy oval. So I don't know, it was just my thoughts.
Thank you. I'll have a talk to Stacey Richardson about that and see what her thoughts are. I don't know if Graham wants to say anything.
Oh, through the mayor, the same really. We'll have a chat to our events people and see if that's something that we can do. Obviously, part of this is trying to still provide some activation through evening events and things like that in the main street and some of the venues around town. But certainly, it's a good comment and worth taking on board. So we'll have a look at how we might be able to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. A question related to what Councillor Gasbrook was talking about. It doesn't say what date it's going to be in September here. Will be held in September, but as we know, September can be quite a wet month. And so I think it would be prudent to look at the issue of obviously closer to the event to be ready to switch it to the main street, given that if it is to be held at the on a sporting oval, there's no room to run for cover, and can be quite a dampener on the event if it's raining. So from that point of view, and the reason it was moved to the football club, as it's explained here, is that it's because of COVID restrictions on social distancing, I guess. And so hopefully those will continue to be lifted. And so so that was one thing, but I also noted in here, and I didn't mark it, that oh yes, I have, the third paragraph from the bottom of page 172, it says here that the festival day activities will be supported by a range of small events held at various locations around the town on Friday and evening events at the various pubs and venues. So I presume that the small events held at various locations yet to be noted, that these will be, they would not be at the football ground.
Yes, that is correct, but also the date is the 17th of September to the 19th of September. That is under the purpose of the report. Those dates are there.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Is there any further commentary? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Again, I can understand it's a great event. Location is debatable, I suppose, and what benefits, and maybe the Gunner Bay Football Club will get some benefits out of it as well because of their bar facilities will be open there. That would be good for the club. Again, I know that around the planning and the control of everything, and I believe, the planning can still go ahead. I don't believe we still need to commit $46,700 as a pre-budget commitment. There's plenty of time to get the budget fixed and done and applied, as long as the planning continues. So when it's ready to go, it's there and the money's available too. So to give another pre-budget commitment, I'm not against the event or the location. As I said, it's debatable, but I'm really against this pre-budget commitment, because when you start adding them all up, all of a sudden it becomes a program that we do on a regular basis. So we're virtually pre-setting our budget now half the time. But anyway, that's just my personal opinion, that I don't think we should be pre-budget commitment. Certainly support it, but the budget will be ratified and endorsed and the money be available.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Any further discussion? Councillor Charles, did you want to close the debate?
Oh, just to say, we don't always agree with Councillor Kemp, you might have noticed.
I'll now put that to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. Item 11.1, support for legislation to keep agricultural regions PFSA free. And I'll do that on block 2, that Councillor receive and note the report, and that the Chief Executive Officer on behalf of Council write a letter to Minister David Basham supporting legislation to keep City Victor Harbor and other agricultural regions in South Australia per and polyfruconal substance, or PFSA, free. Moved that way, Councillor Schofield, and seconded Councillor Henderson. Councillor Schofield, do you want to speak to that?
Thank you. Yes, look, I strongly support this. The PFAS is found in a wide variety of consumer products. Gosh, that sounds loud. Including fire suppressing foam. And so I think I did research on this and was rather horrified at the outcomes that this chemical can produce and cause, even in unborn children. So I think it's necessary that we actually look at this very seriously. So I strongly support it.
Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Councillor Henderson? No, does anybody else want to speak to this? If not, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? Thank you. Environment and infrastructure, we've got the Recreation and Small Grants Program, and the recommendation, which I'll do on block, is to receive and note the report, and also to endorse an individual grant from the Recreation and Sport Small Grants Program for Connor Daniels to attend the National Beach Volleyball Championships in Coolangatta to the amount of $400. Moved that way, Councillor Kemp. And seconded, Councillor Mann. Councillor Kemp, do you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Look, I think any opportunity we can help our young people and our youth to progress their sports and their experiences and to develop, and I think it's a great opportunity for her, and I wish her the best of luck, and I hope she does well.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Mann? No? Does anybody else want to speak to this? I'll put it to the floor then. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried, and I wish him well indeed. We now go to 12.2, the Big Duck Tours Bluff Boat Ramp Facility. And I'll do the recommendation en bloc. That council receive and note the report that council provide the Big Duck Boat Tours with a temporary permit for the exclusive use of the northeastern end of the existing pontoon at the Bluff Boat Ramp during their times of operation, terminating upon the completion of the new Granite Island Causeway or at a time determined by council, subject to the following: that they erect relevant signs at the permit holder's cost, with such sign design and placement to be approved by the Chief Executive Officer. I might ask Victoria to expand on that. I did have some queries, and I'll ask CEO. I'm just wondering whether or not administration can talk to DET and the Big Duck in relation to car parking and look at ways to resolve perhaps a car parking issue with a bus going there as part of that.
Thank you, through the Mayor. Yes, it was the area of concern. I believe it's highlighted within the report that there are already significant difficulties with parking at certain times of the year down at the Bluff Boat Ramp. And while there is really no other place for the Big Duck to launch or actually take their clients or customers, the Bluff Boat Ramp is the only location, but we do need to consider or explore with the Big Duck and possibly with DIT's support, possibly commuting their patrons or customers from the Causeway car park area down to the Bluff Boat Ramp, rather than increasing the number of parking spaces that are required down there. And there's sorts of things I'm happy to explore further.
Thank you. I just thought that was an important note to make before we look at this recommendation. So would someone like to move the recommendation en bloc? Councillor Schofield, thank you. And seconding the recommendation, Councillor Robertson. Councillor Schofield, do you want to speak to it?
Yes, I'd like to, and can I make a slight variation to that? Is that too late?
No, with Councillor Robertson's agreeance, you can make a variation.
Thank
what
you.
Would that be?
Look, I'd like to add in there that admin do have a talk with Big Duck and also DIP to see about the bus, given that there will be quite a few car parking issues down around Whalers Inn.
Thank you, Councillor Schofield. I'm not sure that that's a variation, because that's quite an add-on. So that would probably, I'll just check with the CEO whether that would be a variation or an amendment or another recommendation.
Well, the motion is actually Councillor Schofield's, given that she's moved it. So if she wishes to add that to her motion, she is entitled to do that, or is able to do that. And I'm happy to put under part 2.2. That the administration explore alternatives for transport or car parking difficulties associated with the Big Duck, utilising the Bluff Boat Ramp, something along those lines. Making it up as I go.
I'll just wait till it's written. Are you happy with that, Councillor Robertson, as the seconder?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you. I'll just wait till it's written out, and then you can read it. I'll read that out to you in case you can't see it. So that's that the administration explore alternative opportunities for transporting car park to the Bluff boat ramp to reduce the potential impact on car parking at the Bluff boat ramp. Are you happy with that, Councillor Schofield? Councillor Robertson?
Yeah.
Thank you. Does anybody, or Councillor Robertson, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, I do. I'm happy with that variation. I noted also that the car parking arrangements had been left very much open in this, particularly on page 208. This car parking won't be an issue down there for the bulk of the whale watching season. It's only towards when we're getting into the much warmer weather. And but since the construction of the causeway isn't due to be finished until near to December, by that stage, definitely car parking down there will be an issue. But I think that at that time of the year, yes, if it's arrangements can be made to bus people down, that would help. But also, I was going to suggest that the Big Duck who are quite good at this sort of thing, that they would be able to provide information on their website to their customers at that time that there is parking available, albeit a few hundred metres from the Bluff boat ramp, but there is parking available up Jagger Road and behind the Bluff restaurant there as well.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Are there any further discussion? Councillor Hales?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I'll start off with a question, and the question is pretty simple. It's what happens if we don't grant this permit? And it comes from just that fact of the community facilities we've built and already exceed capacity as they are. By trading off exclusive use of the community facility to a private enterprise. I have nothing against Michael and his operation. I think they do a fantastic job. But we are saying we're going to give you this part of the community's property exclusively for a period of time. What do they get in return for that? And what is the absolute necessity for it? So yeah, what is the question simply is, what if we don't grant the exclusive use permit for the council facility?
Graham, I wonder if you can respond. Kathy, thank you.
Thank you through the Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Hales. Essentially, there is no alternative for the Big Duck. So during those business hours only, if we don't allow them that permit, then they won't be operating during the course of the causeway rebuild.
Thank you. Are there any further? Oh, sorry, Councillor Hales.
Sorry, follow-up question in relation to, I guess the exclusivity aspect again is, who will be policing that? Will it be council officers who will be in charge of policing the exclusive use?
Yes, it would be. As with any other sort of facility or use, it's under our care and control, so our inspectors would need to police it. And like with many things, I would dare say it's if an incident or a concern is reported, no doubt it's from Big Duck if they weren't getting their exclusive use. But again, it's about actually supporting and accommodating a tourism operator during a time where they've had significant change to their business. And ordinarily their lease or arrangement would be with DIT on the causeway, not council.
Thank you. Councillor Charles?
So my question is, how optimistic are you that DIT will pay for a bus? Can that be done?
Extremely optimistic. No, I have no.
What about confident?
I am prepared to have those negotiations, discussions, because I don't think it hurts to ask.
See, we are concerned. We are concerned for the Big Duck. We want it to keep on keeping on. And as it is, we've got a restaurant there that wants to keep on keeping on too. And this is the first time that we've openly discussed the problems that we have with parking there. So often people come along with a couple spare cars and then hop on a boat and go out. So 6 people are going out, 2 cars are left there. There's no space for the restaurant. So we've got 2 businesses we've got to consider. And this is a busy time of the year this speaks of. I think there's just got to be a bus. Maybe Michael Veenstra could put his charges up for this period of time, put them on a bus, take them for a tour around Victor Harbour and show them the sights, then drop them on the, I'm being stupid now, but we must consider this restaurant because quite often their car park is completely booked out with people who have gone out on the ocean and there's nowhere for them to get their trade.
Through the Mayor, if I may, I know the issue of parking has been openly discussed because I remember arriving at this council when it was an issue because you'd actually just finished doing some of the works down there at the Bluff boat ramp. And what we have done in the meantime, we have met with the owners and operators of the Eat at Whalers on numerous occasions around the challenges they have with parking. Unfortunately, their landlord does not provide them with any parking. It is all public parking, that car park at the front of them, as is the public road that was somewhat accommodated by the apartment owners who felt that that was their parking spaces. We have signed that appropriately as public parking and removed any apartment numbers from those parking spaces and have expressed, and Eat at Whalers are advising their customers too. There is parking at the back, which is public parking. So we're trying to address the limited public parking we have down there. So, and yes, I will have those conversations with Michael Veenstra in regards to other alternatives to try and alleviate the challenges we already have down there.
Thank you. Any further commentary? Councillor Schofield, did you want to close the debate? No. I'll put the recommendations en bloc to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now move to the proposed Bluff boat ramp toilet block, the public consultation feedback. And once again, I will do that en bloc, recommendations 1, 2 and 3. Would you prefer me to do them separately, Councillor Kemp?
Oh, no, Mayor Jenkins, I was just putting my hand up to move them en bloc. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Henderson? Councillor Kemp, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I'll ask the leader of the meeting to make a variation to recommendation 2, which is removal of the last 3 words of the recommendations at this stage. So the variation would be that the proposal for a toilet facility as detailed in the communication engagement not be progressed any further in the proposal location. The reason why...
So we've got a seconder already in Councillor Henderson. If Councillor Henderson is happy with that, that variation, then we can go with that. Otherwise, you might need to move an amendment, a formal amendment. Oh, it says motion. But you can move, excuse me. All right, it's your motion, Councillor Kemp. You can change it. I beg your pardon. All right. So you'd like to take out the proposed location at this stage?
That's correct. The reason why I'm asking for that to be done and be voted on is we've certainly had a strong feedback from the community that it's not the best location for a toilet block. By having those words in at this stage could possibly mean it could be brought back in at a later stage as an alternative if we can't find another location. So I think the community's spoken very strongly about it. No toilet block should be at that location. So that's why I asked for those 3 words to be removed and asked the Chamber to support it. As for the rest of it, I think it's good opportunity that we can find some other alternative sites to provide facilities for not just for the fishing community, but also for walkers and various people who use that Franklin Parade shared bikeway, and also people who use up around the Bluff area and along the Bluff Jetty area that could use those facilities. So that's why I support the 3 motions with a slight variant. Thank Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Kemp. Councillor Henderson, did you still want to second that?
No, I withdraw my.
You withdraw your second. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, councillor Charles. Do you want to speak to that?
I suppose I better now. I've missed my opportunity if I don't. I wanted to know, and I guess it's a question first, how much money have we spent on the plans for the toilet block there, the staff time and everything else involved of this original idea of putting it there just by the bike track, by the old, what sort of fig tree is it? Moreton Bay fig tree.
Kathy?
Thank you. Through the mayor, so far on the design, about $4,000. That's all costs spent so far.
Okay, well, to me, it's an example of not looking broadly enough and other opportunities. And of course, in here now, the discussion has started with the owner, or one of the owners of the restaurant, or the whole facility there. No, sorry, they're individually owned. I shouldn't say the whole facility. About having a toilet block within the Whalers Inn that can be used and made public. There's plenty of space for it. I'm glad to see that finally some negotiations going on there, and I'd like to know if it's possible to share that information at the meeting tonight. How's it going? How are your conversations going with the people up there?
Kathy?
Thank you. Through the mayor. Thank you, Councillor Charles. So the team has had a further meeting with the directors of Whalers Inn, and they're the two owners. And the next stage is to do an assessment. So there are existing facilities there that are currently not utilised. There is a change room and there is a male and female toilet. All will likely need some upgrading and some retrofitting. But the team is shortly will go and meet and assess what actually might need to be done. So the owners are very encouraging and very much willing to explore it with us.
Well, that's excellent news, because this will at least introduce some people to the area of the restaurant who might stay and have some drinks on the balcony or on the front veranda or whatever the case may be, and maybe return another day, because this restaurant and their rubbish bin gets filled with fishing bits, and people are using their toilets in any event. They're just going in like a lot of people do with hotels. So this is a recommendation I made 3 times. This is now the 4th time I've mentioned it. Now finally we're getting on with it. We could have saved that $4,000. Okay, so I don't think there's anything else much I've got to say. And I'm not blowing my bags, but it just happens so often that we just go ahead with a particular mindset and don't look at any other alternatives. And that could be said about many things, which I won't even mention now. Thank you.
Councillor Henderson?
Thank you, Mayor. The reason I withdrew seconding the changed motion is because even though I'm very happy we're looking at alternatives, and that's exactly what we should be doing, we may find we have to come back to this location. Now, most of the objections are for the original design we've put up at this location. We're coming back with new ideas, looking at different designs, smaller concept. We may find that that's quite acceptable to the community, single male, single female toilet, or even just a changing places toilet. So I think we need to leave that option open, because this may end up being the only location. It may not, but we need to have our options there, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Littley?
I'm going to seek to reinstate that at this stage in there, so whether that's an amendment or a variation, for those reasons that Councillor Henderson has just spoken. So with your guidance, what would I need to do there? Because I think it is important that we have that option. Likewise, I am encouraged the fact that there's looking around and there's potentially other options. I'm encouraged by that, but it is the case that not everyone was opposed to that location, but more so opposed to the overstated design of these facilities. And I think that location is a suitable location for the reasoning for why these facilities were put up in the first place, or the main reason they were put up in the first place.
Thank you, councillor Littley. I think if this motion is not carried, then somebody might like to propose another motion, but keeping those words in. Would that be what you would?
Actually, no, councillor Littley, if he wished to, he could move an amendment because it's not deviating that significantly from the intent of the motion. But I also would advise or suggest that just removing those words does not mean it precludes you from ever looking at that site again. The words of that motion are that the proposal for a toilet facility as detailed in the communication engagement not be progressed any further in the proposed location. It doesn't say that an alternative design isn't brought back to the chamber. So I don't think the removal of those words does limit you completely.
Councillor Littley?
Yeah, fair call. I'll foreshadow that I will move another motion if this one's lost.
I'd now like to, if there any further discussion? Councillor Kemp, do you want to close the debate?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I think it's critically important that we listen to our community, and we did go to the consultation. They have spoken down there. The people are very strong about having a toilet block in that location. I don't think it's about size or design. I think, yes, it was a huge one to start with. Even putting a smaller one there, I don't think it would be the right location. And I think we'll still get a backlash from our community. And you look at the reviews and how many people did respond, there's a large number of people don't want it in that location ever. Elsewhere, for sure, they want to view it because it is a unique area. It is a great area. It's used a lot by a whole range of different variety of people for various reasons. I think we can find an alternative site which will be pleasing, which will be acceptable for everyone concerned. So I think taking the words out, to me, it's just sort of really putting a signal that, you know, this council should not be considering putting any toilet block in that location. That's the intent. So from that point, you know, I think if we're not careful, we may get another backlash from the community because they've already spoken very strongly. And if we don't support this motion, then I think you will be sending a message back to those people that, you know, we'll consult, but we won't listen to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now put the recommendation on block to the floor. All those in favour? 2, 3, 6. That's carried. Thank you. Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now move to item 12.4, the Coastal Adaptation Study and Strategy. And once again, I'll do the motion on block. Council receive and note the phase 2 report and that council proceed to phase 2 public consultation as guided by attachment A. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Kemp. And seconded by Councillor Schofield. Councillor Kemp, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Again, we have a fantastic pristine coastline. It's not a long one, but it is one we do have, and it's great, and it has great views, and we need to protect it as best we can. And it is a big infrastructure build to protect this coastline from all the different types of conditions that, you know, the coast does suffer from, the various seas, and especially, you know, from the Southern Ocean and the Indian Ocean. But so this adaptation strategy will look at how we could get the community feedback in, what some of the areas that we need to look at, and for the process of the continued study will continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Schofield, does anybody wish to contribute to the debate? In that case, Councillor Robertson.
Yes, Mayor. I'm interested to note here in this one that I think the community consultation on this one is this to be only $500 or is it to be more?
Kelly? Oh. Kelly, sorry, Kathy?
Thank you, through the Mayor. Councillor Robertson, that is just essentially for advertising and distributing the materials, the collateral. Part of the contract with the consultant is that they develop all the materials, that they conduct the consultation, except through the your say. So there's a bit of a combination. It's only $500. Well, it's $500 in the sense that that's what council is doing, but the contractor, the consultants themselves, are producing the bulk of the material.
Yeah, excellent. Very well done, because yes, it makes a big difference when we're looking at, I couldn't believe my eyes. I thought the expenditure to date was the right figure, $15,000. That's what it seems to cost us for public consultations, but that's good news. Thank you.
Is there any further questions or debate? Councillor Kemp, did you want to close the debate? I'll put the motion to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. City Activation and Strategic Planning Advisory Committee minutes 13.1, and on block the recommendation that receive and note the minutes of the 6th of April, which are presented in attachment A, and also that council continue to conduct a fireworks display for New Year's Eve while continuing to investigate carbon and environmentally friendly offsets. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Hales. And seconding that, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Hales, do you want to speak to that? Councillor Henderson? No, does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Kemp?
Just a question, please, Mayor, through to the relevant director. This includes both fireworks displays or just a single midnight one? Because that's what we did last year.
Through the Mayor, I would suggest that it includes both the fireworks displays, so it's business as usual. Last year was an exception more due to the COVID restrictions than other things.
Any further questions? Councillor Hales, did you want to close the debate or anything? Well, I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Unanimously. The Disability Access and Inclusion Advisory meetings of the 4th of March. Unless there's any objections, I'll do that recommendation on block. If someone would like to move that way, Councillor Henderson. And seconded by Councillor Littley. Councillor Henderson, do you want to say anything? No. Councillor Littley, do you want to speak to the motion? Does anybody want to speak to the recommendation? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The Flourio Region Community Advisory Services Committee minutes, and the recommendation is receiving the report. Someone like to move that way? Councillor Hales, and seconded by Councillor Robertson. Councillor Hales, do you want to speak? Councillor Robertson? Does anybody want to speak to the report? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. 14.1, the representative reports. The recommendation is that council receive and note the representative reports for April. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Hales. And seconding that is Councillor Schofield. Either of you want to speak to the representative reports? Anyone want to speak to the representative reports? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. 14.2. Is the Victor Harbour Horse Tram Authority Budget and Business Plan. And I will do recommendation 1 and 2 on block. I'll do recommendation 3 separately. Would someone like to move recommendation 1 and 2? Councillor Hales, thank you. And seconding that, Councillor Charles. Either of you want to speak to recommendation 1 or 2? No. Councillor Charles? No. Anybody want to speak? Councillor Kemp?
Thanks, Mayor Jenkins. Going through this business plan and budget, pretty well put together. I'm not quite sure if it's quite finished yet. I believe it's a bit short of some information. It only covers, even though it's a budget plan for the 2021-23, but only has 1 year of financial statements in there. I thought a business plan should cover off on all the years that it covers the business plan for that, just my opinion. So that's why I think it's incomplete. So I would thought that we should have that in there for each year, whether that is a normal practice, but it's my understanding it would be. But on page 304 of the business plan, there's some information there which I'm not quite sure whether it can be answered or not. When it talks about the 415,400 under the 21-22 statement, operating expenses of 933,200 will be funded by own source revenue of 498,500. Council will provide a contribution of 434,700 to the authority. We're aiming for a break-even budget, but in the figures here it's 415,400, which is a variance of 19,300. So are we giving the Horse Tram Authority 415,400 or are we giving them 434,700 in this plan? I know that the recommendation says 415,400, but again, there's an error in here which I think could be misleading, and it may be a typo. Yep. But I would have thought if something comes to change, it should be proofread to make sure the figures are correct.
Director Rokoczynski.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, I believe it is just a typo. The request. Sorry, bear with me. Do you know which one it is, Kelly? You can. Thanks.
Through the Mayor, in terms of the council contribution, it is the 415,400. It is just a typo within the text. There was one of the initial drafts had the higher amount, and the authority worked on that to bring it down so that there was no increase to the council contributions, and have just missed it in that one spot.
Thank you for the query, the clarification. And on page 305 to finish off, I noticed from the 2021 budget to the 21-22 budget, they've reduced the marketing, which is advertising, promotions, souvenir purchases, from 22,800 to 18,000. I find that incredibly, if we're trying to have a good year, a good improvement, we wouldn't want to be reducing our budget. We should be increasing that area, because that is the key factor of supporting the Horse Tram Authority to get the promotions out there and sponsorships or whatever we need to be doing. So if someone could answer why that's been reduced.
Through the Mayor, so I believe when the Horse Tram did their presentation the other night, they did mention that in terms of marketing as well as things like sponsorship, that it was difficult at this point in time. that they were finding that it was difficult to get people willing to sign on because of COVID and because of other restrictions on their own individual business. So they were looking at pulling down those marketing costs and re-evaluating for a bigger push once the environment basically stabilised a little bit.
Thank you. Are there any further commentary? Councillor Robertson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I was looking through here for the performance targets for the horse-drawn tram, and I don't find too many of them. Some of what has been put down here, not as performance targets, but more just things that have to be done and more to do with their regulatory responsibilities rather than performance targets, such as the extent to which they've developed relationships with the local community. There's nothing mentioned in here about what they're doing about volunteers, community engagement through either sponsorship or Friends of the Horse-Drawn Tram, and development of other, tram experiences in Victor Harbor. And certainly nothing in there about trying to reduce the $400,000 in terms of performance target, that $400,000+ that the city residents provide this horse-drawn tram business with each year. There is a proposal we're coming to next about the VIP experiences process, but to me the extent to which they've developed actual performance targets is still leaves a lot to be desired. Yeah, so I think it's business as usual with this business operation that that we have here, and the figures presented, to me, don't add up to a lot in terms of a hope that this is going to be any less of a drain on the future.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. There any further commentary? Councillor Schofield?
Thank you. I believe that Councillor Kemp, that was a good pickup. I actually noted that 18,000 before, which is looking at purchases at this current stage. The souvenir purchases for this current year is $7,000, with retail market of the current stock on hand at 18,000, and we're currently sitting at $17,000 income for the 9 months. So that area has huge potential for growth once we have better facilities. But yes, I did pick up on that one too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Councillor Littley?
Yeah, I'll be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Hales, did you want to close the debate? No. I'll put the motion to the floor. The recommendation, that's in block 1 and 2. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. Recommendation 3 is the operating budget, detailing a council contribution of $415,400 as presented of attachment B. Moved by Councillor Henderson and seconded by Councillor Littley. Councillor Henderson, do you want to talk to that? Councillor Littley, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, only to say that, as I said in our earlier informal gatherings and workshops when this was presented up, I suggested to the Horse Tram Authority, amid some criticism of their aspirations for this project, that they should put it to council and put it to the test. And that's what they've done, and I'll be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Littley. Any discussion in relation to recommendation 3? Councillor Robertson?
Yes, Mayor. I come back to an issue raised previously that the statements and in this operation that the Horse-Drawn Authority, that the operating budget is presented with the logo of the Victor Harbour Tramway. You recall the last time we raised this matter in discussion.
That's right. You said that there were 6 logos that they had?
3.
3.
Yep.
I think in the discussion you went 6 and then 4. I understand from talking to Med Whipley, they have 2 logos that are both registered.
Yes, they may well have 2, and I'll be asking for, this is copyrighted?
Their logos would be copyrighted, yes.
Well, the domain names are not copyrighted, which is important, but why do we need 2 logos for this operation? Is it the Victor Harbour Tramway or is it the Victor Harbour Horse-Drawn Tram?
I'll take that question on notice and ask Meg Whitby. Thank you. Through perhaps Director Rokoczynski can ask her. Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Henderson, do you want to close the debate? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. We have 14.3, which is the Victor Harbour Horse Tram Authority behind the scenes and experiences business plan. And the recommendation is really council receiving and noting that plan. Moved by Councillor Henderson and second by Councillor Schofield. Councillor Henderson, do you want to speak to that? Councillor Schofield? No, does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Kemp and then Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. It was a good plan put together. It covers a lot of areas. And it looks like if it does get off the ground and work well, it'll be a great experience for people to go down there and pay for fee for service. But one of the things I've noticed in the plan, it talks about 203,000 additional funding. To me, that's like a startup cost, which council may have to provide. So the question, I guess, to the authority, back through the board member or through the Kelly or Mr. Padhouse, can the authority borrow that money? Do they need to come to council cap in hand asking for more funding to start up this business proposal? Is there other ways of them raising funds? I know they're going for grants to actually fund some of the major projects of for doing it, but the startup cost is another 203,000. So if that's for the next financial year, that's going to be $600,000 we've given the Horse-Drawn Authority. Which to me, I'm thinking, starting to get out of hand. But if they can have other ways of providing that money, I guess they should explore those avenues.
Perhaps Director Rokoczynski can answer that.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm not under the impression that they're needing to come to council for those extra monies. Council's contribution will be through capital costs, which have already been funded through this year's capital budget, and they are seeking additional grant funding to fund the remainder of their capital project costs. The venture is meant to generate the revenue from the behind the scenes and VIP experiences.
Thank you. Councillor Robertson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. A couple of questions, if I might. It's mentioned in here that a grant application has been made to the Better Building Regions Fund of, I think it was the $203,000. Was that grant application made by the Horse-Drawn Tram Authority itself, or was it made by the council?
It's made by them as far as I understand. Karen? Yep, it was made by them.
Okay, so are they anticipating that, as with most of those types of grant applications, that the 50% of the grant application will be proposed from a Better Building Regions Fund, and 50% would come from the council?
I believe that 50% will come from them. Karen?
Through the Mayor, so council's already allocated funds in the capital budget for 2021 for the build of their stables. The additional money that they need to expand the stables to allow for the VIP and behind the scenes experience would come from the grant funding if they're successful. If they're not able to gain that grant funding, then they'd have to delay what they've put in their business plan for the VIP and behind the scenes experience until they're able to secure those additional funds.
Because this VIP experience to me has got a whole lot of hubris associated with it, both in terms of the projected income figures as well as the projected costs. This is not an experience designed for local pockets. This is an experience designed, even the ones for the school children and so on. It's not designed for local people. And we have seen before that businesses that try to really exploit the local people in terms of the costs and charges for things, it leads to failure of that business enterprise. There's also a lot in here in relation to, I think that we are getting away from the basics of what this tram is there for. It's a passenger service to show people, show the Granite Island, the causeway off. And if it was fully developed in that respect, one would imagine that, okay, there's more that can be done, but we have so many things about this horse-drawn tram that are not fully operational. We've had a COVID letdown, but we've got a third tram that's still to be put back in working order, and a fourth one that's yet to begin being renovated and put into operation. But we have the horses to pull multiple trams. We are still only operating with a maximum of 2 horse-drawn trams, and during the peak period of visitors through the summer and up to Easter time, we have only 2 horse-drawn trams working in that area, and we should be running a service that spans a much greater period of time during daylight hours than what it does at present. There is nothing in here also about volunteers. A key issue in terms of community engagement on programs like this is that visitors come here to meet the locals. It's not that the staff of the horse-drawn tram are not locals, but they come here to visit, to mix it in with locals. And we don't have anything mentioned in here at all. The references to increased personnel inputs are all to do with hiring more staff, which to me is a very risky way of doing things, because then we're left with those staff on the books. But also we are not engaged. There's nothing in here which talks about how sponsorship could reduce the costs. And that's sponsorship not just from, companies that might be interested in doing that from, say, Adelaide, but also our local companies down here that would probably be able to reduce considerably some of the operational costs in return for signage on sponsorship. To me, it's moving forward on something that's getting away from the basics when we have not yet got this horse-drawn tram into a place where it's looking like an organisation that's got a single focus in terms of its branding, that its facilities like the horse-drawn tram stop over on Granite Island. Looks dreadful. It has no sign up on it saying it's a horse-drawn tram or the Victor Harbour Tramway, whatever is the preferred logo for that area. The place has not been painted for donkey's years or cleaned. And, you know, here we are going out on VIP experiences when there's so much work to be done on sharpening up this business operation.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Oh, you asked about volunteers, and I know at the deputation that we, or not deputation, the meeting that we had with Meg and somebody from the board, Nigel Catt, one of the things that they were saying was that they will be looking at volunteers, but it's very difficult at the moment. Most of our volunteers, as you know, are quite elderly. And at the moment, the volunteers have to put the tent up and down for merchandising. There's no volunteer hub, and the stables out there are not suited to volunteers. So once that gets fixed up, they will be looking at recruiting volunteers, which are very important. The other thing that they said was that sponsorship due to COVID was very difficult, and a number of businesses that perhaps had been interested in sponsoring wanted to wait until COVID was finished and they were more sure of their finances. So those were two things that I'll remember from the other day, but I take the rest of what you've said on board, and I'm sure that Karen can pass that on to the tram. Is there any more discussion? Councillor Littley?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to touch on a few things that other councillors have said earlier. Councillor Kemp, you said that this is giving money to the horse tram. We're not going to be giving money to the horse tram. It's investing money in an operation that is under the council umbrella. It's not giving, it's investing, particularly when we're working towards improving facilities and creating more experiences for a tourism service, not a passenger service. Councillor Robertson, it is a tourist service. It's branded very well, and I believe that was explained at our last gathering here, that the branding was on the money, spot on, and perhaps you didn't hear that when that was suggested last time, but because it's been repeated again. But I do see, and I will acknowledge that you've picked up that we are running 2 trams and not one single tram. There are another 2 trams there that could be potentially refurbished and put on track, and that would hopefully be come as a result when we've got a visitor experience that is generating more income and bringing that in and growing this tourism attraction. Monarto is a great example of the behind the scenes type experience that we could aspire to. Yep, that is great for internationals and everything like that. That people from overseas come along and go out to our great Monarto African plains display out there and get with the lions, all those animals and creatures that come from overseas and are put onto a property here. Well, this is a locally grown, locally operated tourism attraction that you don't get anywhere else. Nothing like this anywhere else. So I think that certainly will be appealing to overseas and interstate visitors there with a visitor experience. But likewise, Arambura over the school holidays has just had a behind the scenes that dozens and dozens of local kids have got involved in, spending $120 a hit to go in there and be that grassroots zoo experience. That's the kind of person that we also attract, or the horse tram visitor behind the scenes experience would also attract as well. So saying that it's not going to work for locals, I disagree with that. And that's where you're going to get your volunteer base who get the skills involved there, the higher end skills that will allow them to be volunteers on this horse tram service. We're talking about heavy horses here, working with animals. You can't just give a volunteer a job. There's a number of jobs that they can do, but we want to be able to grow the experience and grow the amount of jobs that volunteers can get involved, because right now you can't volunteer to drive a horse tram across that causeway. You can't volunteer to even go in and clean those stalls up with those horses because you're not qualified. It doesn't meet OH&S. It doesn't pass the pub test. I'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Is there any, councillor Charles?
Yep. I think what's been said is all very interesting. The comment I think that Councillor Robertson was trying to make was that the VIP experience is very, very expensive and may not appeal to or be affordable by the locals. We're talking some $300 odd for the big deal, and quite a lot of money for a high tea and all that sort of thing. But we, you know, being on the positive side of things, we never know if we don't give it a go. You know, that's really as simple as it. That's the slogan from the Northern Territory, of course. A little bit of a slip. But what we do have down here is a dual magnet attraction. People see an island, they want to go out. That's our big attraction, along with the horse-drawn tram. And of course, some people will hop on the tram, others would prefer to walk if they can. We've just finished saying yes to some casual events. Here's a little money, not a lot for each one, but some up to $4,000 to, and of course the Rock and Roll Festival. That's become a fairly permanent attraction. But we have so many attractions down here which are permanent, and we need to sort of keep them oxygenated. Perhaps we've got to give birth to this thing. And it's been difficult with the COVID situation. And I know that I'm as impatient as anybody. I really am. I'd like to see what this group of highly qualified, as you read, our board, what they can actually produce. A lot of promises were made when they first came and introduced themselves, and I was very excited about what they had to say. They've been hamstrung by the COVID thing, unfortunately. But we've got Steam Ranger, we've got whales that come here on a regular basis. Hopefully we'll get some more penguins, or we can help breed them. I don't know. That's just been a disaster. We've got the Bluff. There are so many reasons why people come down here. There's unique experiences, and these are ones we've got to support. So I'll continue to support this, and I do it in hope. And we really don't have much choice, to be honest. It's a no-win situation.
Thank you, Councillor Charles. Councillor Henderson, do you want to close the debate?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd love to. I was going to also draw a parallel with an open range zoo, which I was going to not name, but now it's been named. Monarto Zoo is a very good parallel to compare with this plan for behind the scenes tours and VIP experiences. As someone who has had a lot of experience at Monarto Zoo as a volunteer tour guide, I was there for 10 years. I can tell you that as with Monarto Zoo, the main business will be the daily tours on the bus that people from Adelaide go and experience. The add-on to that are the behind the scenes tours. They're the things that bring in the big money. They run infrequently, but they're booked out years ahead, some of them. It'll be exactly the same with the horse-drawn tram. The daily business will be taking people across to Granite Island on the tram. The VIP experience will be held a few times a year. I can see that it would be booked out in advance, possibly mainly by travellers from overseas when they're allowed to return, or in the interim, people from interstate who want that special experience that they can't get anywhere else. So I think this is a very good plan, and of course I'll be supporting it.
Thank you. I now put the recommendation to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Certainly. All those in favour, please stand. I'll just wait for Karina to. Councillor Mann, Councillor Charles, Councillor Littley, Councillor Glasbrook, Councillor Kemp, Councillor Schofield, Councillor Hales, Councillor Henderson, and against Councillor Robertson. That motion is carried. Item 14.4 is the Flourio Regional Waste Authority Draft Business Plan and Long-Term Financial Plan. I will do the on block unless anybody objects. Would somebody like to move the recommendation items 1 and 2 on block? Councillor Schofield, thank you, and Councillor Glasbrook. Councillor Schofield, do you want to say anything? Councillor Glasbrook?
Just, yeah, briefly, I think it's fairly self-explanatory, this report. Those of us like Councillor Kemp will have had a good close look at this and noticed that it has gone up from the last financial year, which I am disappointed about as well. The Waste Authority has had a very good history of keeping its budgets within, you know, very close to CPI anyway. But unfortunately, as you would have seen from the report, the bulk of this increase is actually something that happened well over 12 months ago, before the last budget was, well, the budget had been set and endorsed, but it was before the year had even started. Our recycling costs increased by about 84%. So we were able to mitigate that for this financial year by carrying forward essentially the council's credit for this financial year, but unfortunately going into the future we can't. We've got nothing left to raise, so we have to put the price up, unfortunately. There's also some new initiatives in there. Hopefully you've noticed some of those which have been costed. You know, if anyone's against those initiatives, well, we can, you know, there are things that we can pull out, but we want to move forward as well. We want to try and achieve things, and this council has been very vocal about trying to achieve different things. So we have included, you know, I suppose you could call them luxuries, but I think they're important. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. I think that's all I need to say.
Thank you, Councillor Glasbrook. Does anybody want to speak to this or have any questions for Councillor Glasbrook? Councillor Kemp, Councillor Robertson, and then Councillor Littley.
Thanks, Mayor Jenkins. In attachment A, page 369 of the agenda, they talk about due to the high levels of activity in 2021, the WRD forecast income for the 21-22 year is based on a 3-year average. It's got Goolwa, Yankalita, Strathalbyn, Kangaroo Island, but no Victor Harbour.
Perhaps Councillor Glasbrook.
Something for notification, just to.
Oh, sorry, Director Rokoczynski can answer that.
Thank you. Through the chair, those relate specifically to income through the waste and recycling depot itself. So Victor Harbour not having one, the one we're utilising most closely is the one at Goolwa.
Then Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think the Flourio is to be congratulated on this report, and particularly their draft business plan. I've read it with a great deal of interest. Particularly, and a question, if I might, about the business plan on page 368, which has already been highlighted, about the increase because of the cost of recycling processing. This comes back to an issue that I think that probably, despite the best efforts of the authority, probably the cost of dumping as well as recycling will continue to rise. And I wondered whether, we've talked about this before in the chamber, about the issue of separating out in the rates notices the portion of the rates that's due to the waste recycling. And I was wondering if this was a time when those likely costs which would result in rates increases would justify having rates singled out in the rates notices as a separate item.
Answer that one.
Kelly? Thank you through the Mayor. And yes, I know you have raised that before, Councillor Robertson. It does cause an issue in terms of rates and not a fee for service. And so that is one of the reasons why we don't have items separately listed. They're a tax. And so the services are different for everybody in terms of what council provides with the money it raises from the tax, which are rates. It is possible to do a separate rate or have it as a different line if council so wished. It will increase the administration around that, and there would need to be some methodology behind how that was going to be applied. If we were going to add on an additional amount for the increases to the waste, we would need to specify whether we're or not we were going to show the entire amount that was due to waste as a proportion of the total rates, or whether it was just an increase on top of CPI. But council has the ability to decide to show anything as a separate line that's allowable under the separate rates portion of the Act.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah,
follow-up question?
Yes. I like very much the on page 391, the goals and strategies, very practical in here, and on the and the exciting prospects they've got there for developing a carbon emissions roadmap, to developing best practices. They want to set up a Friends of the Flourio, which I think is a great idea. Particularly their programs of research and programs of investment in research and their education, which I think were really well thought out and practical, and will have an impact. I'd just like, Mayor, to, if I might, on this occasion here, I've put a piece of paper on everyone's desk, which is about ryegrass straw. I did bring in 2 of the straws.
This isn't related to the recommendation, Councillor Robertson.
No, it's not.
I'm sure people can have a look at that. I did wonder what that was. So people can have a look at that themselves at the end of the council meeting and talk to you if they're interested in it. So if you can keep it to the recommendation.
Yeah. So I thought this report is a really good one. It's got some, there'll be great opportunities to both increase the impact that the Flourio has on the environment, but also engage the community more at many different levels about recycling at the household level. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Littley.
Yeah, I had a question, and it's probably Councillor Glasbrook that's going to be well placed to answer it. So I'll ask this through the chair, and perhaps if Councillor Glasbrook has an answer. A couple of years ago, when it was around this time of the year, when we moved with some haste to bring in our new waste system, our new 3-bin waste system there, and we did so with a view that that would help to absorb some of those rising costs for the landfill cost charges that were pushed onto us by state government. Now we're faced with the same issue with recycling costs going up. I'm just wondering where the balance is there. Of course, there's a hell of a lot more benefits to the way we've acted as far as environmental benefits, and I'm not suggesting that we've done the wrong thing there, but can you tell us where that level is at? We've now got an 84% increase in recycle costs. Have we perhaps made a rod for our own back in a financial side, or is that something that is probably not something that could be forecast either, I don't think, at the time.
No, thank you for your question, and it is a good question. When we were talking about savings with the fortnightly system, we were talking about reducing landfill, which is, the state government over the past, half a dozen years have just increased the gate fees for landfill. When we were going through that process, we were actually receiving a small amount of money for our recycles. And so therefore that wasn't an issue. The fact that we were going to get a significant amount of increase in our recycles wasn't an issue at all. It was good because it wasn't essentially costing us. Unfortunately, with the China sword and with the way things that have happened in the last few years, that has changed significantly. Whereas now we're having to pay to take our recycles to our processors. So we weren't expecting that, I suppose, is the only answer I can say. And it certainly wasn't on our radar that we would be paying to deposit our recycles at the transfer station. So it's different. We have reduced our landfill, which has produced savings, but unfortunately, we've been hit from the side by this recycle issue. So I think that should answer your question.
I'll just follow that up with a comment if I can. On that front, and that was my understanding of it. So thanks, Councillor Glasbrook, for actually confirming that and spelling it out a little bit more. Look, it's a case of weathering the storm would be good, because I can't see that the world is going to recycle. We look more and more, and at some stage that'll come back into line, I'm sure. So it's a worthy thing that we did, and I guess we just got to, like the rest of the councils around us and the world in general, have to weather that storm.
Thank you, Councillor Littley. Is there any more commentary or questions? Councillor Schofield, do you want to close the debate? No. I'll put the recommendations en bloc to the council. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Member reports. We have the mayoral report for April, and the recommendation is the council receive and note that. Do I have someone to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Mann, and seconded Councillor Henderson. Any questions in relation to the mayoral report? Councillor Charles?
I noticed, sorry, incidentally, I overhydrated. I had to leave the room, but I'm happy now. I noticed that back on the 16th of March, you had a meeting with CEO and Andrew Harris, QC Andrew Harris, from was he representing the LG, the Local Government Mutual Liability Scheme, or is he making house calls and we're paying for it now?
You can answer that one if you like.
Through the Mayor, we only deal with Mr Harris as a result of the Local Government Mutual Liability Scheme. We have not engaged Mr Harris, the scheme has.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions in relation to the mayoral report? In that case, I put the recommendation to the floor. All those in favour of receiving it? Those against? It's carried. The elected member report. We have one report from Councillor Kemp. The recommendation is that council receive and note it. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Mann, and seconding to Councillor Robertson. Any questions to Councillor Kemp or any discussion? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. There are no matters of urgency. Number 17, questions on notice. Council member continual harassment of staff. I'll take that as read. Questions without notice. Are there any questions without notice? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Through to the CEO. Just want an update on the old goods shed, the old Wales Centre restoration. My understanding, we will go have a move in June, but now it's been mooted maybe September. Is there any reasons if it's been moved, moving the Vic Centre and the Wales Centre back into the old goods shed?
I might actually defer to Graham Pathouse on that one, given I've been away for the last 3 weeks. I know we've had some delays with getting the lift for that building, but I'll defer to Graham.
Through the Mayor, yes, delays with the lift. It's mainly the lift shaft that needs the fairly specialist treatment that's been a bit hard to secure and source. So it is underway. I haven't got an updated time frame. I'm not sure when it starts, but the lift has been the delay.
Just a second question to follow on for that. Is there any additional costs in the delay of the lift shaft going in, or requires further funding? And is any further delays costings in keeping the Wales Centre and the Information Centre at the Coral Street Arts Space?
Through the Mayor, if I may, I'll take those questions on notice. I need to follow up. I will do some further research and provide an update to you in the members' update with those questions that you've raised.
Thank you. Any further questions without notice? Councillor Charles.
I probably could have said something earlier, but the Disability Committee have mentioned again that chicane, that safety chicane that stops people from just walking straight across the train line at the end of Bridge Terrace, the dead end, is still not suitable for disability use, and we keep taking it off the budget. Is it on the budget this year to be done?
That matter was actually raised at the Disability Advisory Committee
Right.
again, and we will be bringing it back to Council. The Infrastructure Department are aware of those issues, and it is an item. It was actually mentioned in the papers tonight.
That's right. That's where I should have mentioned it earlier. That's all. Thank you.
If there's no more questions without notice, we move on to motions on notice. 19.1, motion on notice, mayoral written explanation from Councillor Peter Charles. I have a perceived conflict of interest in this item, and last time I vacated my chair as a perceived conflict of interest. I have thought about it further, and I still have a perceived conflict of interest, but I will be dealing with it by not entering into the debate. However, I will use my casting vote if required tonight, and I will be staying in the chair. The first recommendation is that Council receive and note the motion on notice, mayoral written explanation, Councillor Charles's report. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Charles and Councillor Mann. Councillor Charles, do you want to speak to receiving and noting your report?
No need for that. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Mann? No. I put that first recommendation to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? Sorry, can we do that again, please? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Charles, would you like to propose your?
Thank you again. Yes, hasn't changed since last meeting. That Council require Mayor Jenkins to present written explanation in the public interest at the April Council meeting, which is now a negative, to specifically address the following. 1, to please provide evidence to support your claim, that's the Mayor's claim, that constant questioning by myself amounts to harassment and not part of my oath of office to fulfil the duties of the public office in, once again, the public interest. 2, you specifically claim that I am harassing council staff, then please explain why it is a serious matter, has not been raised with me personally. 3, you claim that this alleged harassment has taken place over several years with numerous staff members, so please explain how such serious charges have been allowed to continue without intervention. And then finally, 4, given that I have had frequent codes of conduct against me, please provide evidence that your action of specifically naming me, Councillor Charles, in an email as a person continually harassing council staff on numerous occasions is not a deliberate act of victimisation of my name perhaps, but victimisation.
Thank you.
So,
do I have a seconder for that motion?
I can speak to it first. I've got my 5 minutes if I need it.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, somebody might not want to second my motion after they've heard what I've got to say. I believe the Mayor should explain and substantiate her written assertions or retract her serious unconfirmed accusations, which I feel are malicious, rumour and an insinuation. If there is conclusive material in these public assertions, I advise the Mayor to prepare an official complaint. I consider the matter is a textbook example of professional bullying, belittling, executed from a public position of power. And that's really all I want to say on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for Councillor Charles's motion? Councillor Robertson, do you want to speak to that? In that case, I'll put the motion to the floor. Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Kemp, sorry, Councillor Lidley.
Yep, I'll speak to it. I won't be.
Sorry, Councillor Kemp. Sorry, was first Councillor Kemp and then Councillor Lidley.
It is an interesting motion on notice as to bring this into the public realm, but it is in the public realm, and I think, you know, it needs to be rectified. And that I think, you know, there is an explanation I believe the Mayor owes Councillor Charles and the community by these allegations. So I think it's important that, you know, the Mayor responds to them and write back to the chamber, and whatever the outcome is, I think Councillor Charles needs that peace of mind that it has been looked at and has been addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Lidley.
Yes, well, I won't be supporting this motion at all. I had thought at our last meeting that this was by far the biggest load of nonsense Councillor Charles could come up with and that Councillor Robertson could support. But given the work of both to suggest I would fabricate my account of events at the last meeting to deliberately mislead or lie to the council and community, I was clearly wrong. I certainly won't be supporting the motion, and I state my support is with the Mayor. And I also believe that it would be good to see these councillors, or see Councillor Charles, put progressive motions on the table in future. Thanks.
Does anybody else want to speak to the motion? Councillor Hales.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. A question again, if I may. The wording of the motion is that council's requiring Mayor Jenkins to present a written explanation, so on and so forth. My question is to the CEO. Does the chamber have the authority to require written explanations of the Mayor in relation to any matter?
No, they don't.
Thank you, CEO. I think it's pretty clear under the oath of office, the act that governs us, the code of conduct, there are clear and well-known complaint handling procedures available to elected members. I encourage elected members, if they feel aggrieved, to use them and not the chamber for this. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Councillor Hales. Is there any further? Councillor Glasbrook and then Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, I guess.
Councillor Glasbrook and then.
Sorry, no, you go, Tim.
Councillor Mann.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess going on from Councillor Hales, I think one, whether we're able to undertake it or not, you know, we're not able to ask for that written explanation. But I think also, you know, there was some within this report. There was a mention of at the previous meeting the undermining of democracy and stifling of debate. And I think, you know, it would have been something I would have been happy to debate last time, because I think it is something that we need to talk to. But I think my response would have been the same last time, is that there are ways and means to handle these things. Part of being a liberal democracy is that we have institutions such as the Ombudsman and ICAC and all these other groups to deal with issues such as this. And I don't think the Chamber's the place to be dealing with issues of this nature. And I think it does prevent us from, I guess, spending time on those important community matters. So I won't be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Councillor Glasbrook, did you want to say anything?
Yes, I just want to say that, you know, I tend to agree that the chamber is not the place for this. But I also disagree that official complaints and codes of conduct and all of the stuff that this council has been through is also not the way. I believe that this whole issue could have been solved quite easily right back early in the piece. Nip it in the bud, as the old saying goes. A quick apology, a quick, oh, whoops, yes, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that, or maybe I did make a mistake. If you look at the trouble that this issue has caused and what this has blown into and what this has done to this council, it's embarrassing and it's shameful as far as I'm concerned. Surely as a group of people we can think about what we say and consider that we may have said something wrong, and if so, just withdraw it or change it or make it right, rather than all of this. It's just unbelievable as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I would like to support it because I think it would be nice to set a precedent, but that if someone says something and rather than try and sort it out between themselves, but that's not going to happen. And I've lost my train of thought now. But anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. I won't support it because I don't think the chamber's the right spot either. But I do believe that some of the things that have been going on lately are just unbelievable.
Thank you, Councillor Glasbrook.
I have a question.
Yes, Councillor Kemp.
Just on a clarification from the CEO's response that the chamber doesn't have the authority to move this motion and to make the mayor respond to the questions from Mr. Councillor Charles. If that is the case, why weren't that conveyed to us earlier on last meeting in an email? Really, this motion is invalid. It's not correct. Why wasn't that information relayed to us previously?
Through the mayor, one, the question wasn't asked, and two, I hadn't really given it much thought. Taking 3 weeks leave and watching this council from afar, I've actually had lots of consideration to many matters.
Councillor Charles, would you like to close debate if there's
Thank
any
you.
further
Yes, I
debate?
would. Well, it appears as though if we were to put this through, if the council or the chamber was to put this through, it would be ultra vires. So, we can't have that. We have too many opportunities for ultra vires, and we've had plenty in the previous council, one that lasted for 12 months. Anyway, it's been aired in public, regardless of the result, whether it's taken one way or another. So this chamber has now done this twice. I could change it for next month and make it request. And I can keep throwing it in for the rest of the term of this council. But, I don't have any faith in the Ombudsman, if you don't mind me saying so. I've had plenty of experience with him. And something like this issue, I would have been screwed down to the ground by him. Because it's a very powerful position that he has, and I think he is independent and free-thinking and does what he's meant to do to the letter. But when it all comes down to it, I have a choice. I can put this up as a motion. No one can stop me. That's the law. And there's no law, no legislation that prohibits me from doing so. So I can attack this issue whichever way I want to do it. I can also take it out to the public. So if something's not resolved here, I can resolve it in the atmosphere and the area of the public domain. So thank you very much. Thanks for listening to me. Sorry about the embarrassment, but I didn't cause it.
Thank you, Councillor Charles. I now put the recommendation to the council. All those in favour? And those against? That's lost. Thank you.
Before you say we can't have one, please.
All those in favour, please stand. Councillor Charles. Oh, sorry, just wait for Karina. Councillor Charles. Councillor Glasbrook. And Councillor Kemp. And those against, Councillor Mann, Councillor Robertson, Councillor Littley, Councillor Schofield, Councillor Hales and Councillor Henderson. That motion is lost. Sorry? It is 8:10, so we do need to take a break. So if we come back, if we'd have 10 minutes, 10-minute break, come back at 8:20 and then we'll carry on with the next item. Thank you very much. Much for all coming back on time. We now move to item 19.2, a motion on notice, draft amendment report, 8th of March, Councillor Charles. The first recommendation is that council receive and note Councillor Charles's motion on notice.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes,
I'll withdraw this motion. Thank you very much.
thank you. We now move to item 21.2. Is that right? 20? No. 20. Yep, I beg your pardon. Motions without notice. Are there any motions without notice? Apart from Councillor Mann's. Mark Macarita, no? None for you. Any other motions without notice? No. We now move to confidential items. 21.1. And the first recommendation is that pursuant to section 92 of the Local Government Act 1999, the council orders that all members of the public, except for the Chief Executive Officer, Victoria McCurdy, Director Communication and Development, Graham Pathouse, Director Corporate and Customer Service, Karen Rojaczynski, Director Environment and Infrastructure, Kathy Hayter, Group Manager Governance and Finance, Kelly Knight-Stacey, Executive Assistant, Karina Overall, be excluded from attendance at the meeting for agenda item 21.1, confidential City Activation and Strategic Planning Advisory Committee minutes of the 6th of April 2021. That the council is satisfied that pursuant to section 93B of the Act, the information to be received, discussed or considered in relation to the agenda item is information the disclosure of which could reasonably be expected to confer a commercial advantage on a person with whom the council is conducting or is proposing to conduct business or to prejudice the commercial position of council. In addition, the disclosure of this information would, on balance, be contrary to the public interest. The public interest in the meeting has been balanced against the public interest in the continued non-disclosure of the information. The benefit to the public at large resulting from withholding the information outweighs the benefit to it of disclosure of the information. The council is satisfied that the principle that the meeting be conducted in a place open to the public has been outweighed in these circumstances because the information could jeopardise the commercial position of third parties. Would someone like to? Thank you, Councillor Littley, and seconded by Councillor Hales. Either of you want to speak to that? Anyone want to speak to that? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. I'll just wait for the gallery to leave.
Members, I just want to quickly advise you, we are putting a notice up, but we've had issues with putting our live streaming back up since we had our break. We've just posted something on social media advising our viewers that we've had difficulty, so they would not have seen that portion of the meeting.